My name is Carly Madison Brown, and today I'm going to be talking about crisis communication in the public relations field, specifically Pencils Down, the 100-Day Writers Guild strike. So this happened back in 2007, and to give you a little background information, we're going to start with the situational analysis. The Writers Guild of America East, or the WGAE, is a labor union for TV and film writers that are based east of the Mississippi River. So when we think of film or TV or anything related to media, usually our minds go straight to Hollywood. Well, this is a labor union that focuses on the east of the Mississippi, mostly the writers that are in New York. So during 2007, this guild in New York City realized that they were struggling to be recognized by the media industry because everyone had this idea that TV is just Hollywood. So those film writers were working under the Minimum Basic Agreement, or the MBA, and that's a contract between the Writers Guild and the Alliance for Motion Picture and Television Producers. That acronym is AMPTP. The MBA contract was set to expire in October, but it wasn't providing compensation for these New York writers based on new media. And they knew that the future in film and TV was in new media because now we can stream online. It's not just broadcasting television shows or movies on the silver screen anymore. So they knew that they weren't being compensated for all of the writing and the work that they were doing. The WGAE knew that it was imperative to get the new MBA contract to cover that new media because it ensured their economic survival. To get ahead of this crisis, the WGAE began preparing for a strike, and they did this by contacting the Goldman Communication Group. And according to History.com, it says that on this day in 2007, that the 100-day strike was Hollywood's longest stoppage since 1988. So this 100 days was the longest time that Hollywood had seen a stoppage of film or writing or recording since the mid-80s. Now for research, the Guild and the Goldman Communication Group, they did their own research to analyze the bargaining history of the AMPTP. They looked at business models, media platforms, and a whole lot more. And these are some of the things that they found out. The AMPTP had never agreed to actually compensate in the first contract, and they refused to negotiate in future contracts for this guild in New York. The new contracts were regarding new technology, and at that time it was just VHS tapes, but eventually it moved on into DVDs. In past strikes, the Guild had not stood as firm as they needed to when they were looking at MBA gains for the future, and that empowered the AMPTP. And according to their website, the Goldman Communication Group is an award-winning public relations firm that seeks to help their organizations create, communicate, and control their message. So along with a commitment to excellence, the Goldman Communication took a personal approach to helping the Guild ensure that they succeeded in their successful strike campaign. More of the research they found was that the AMPTP was a website. They had websites and annual reports that showed how they bragged about revenue that was coming in from new media. But they told the opposite to the Guild in New York. They didn't tell New York writers that there was really any revenue coming in from recording and film and writing that was going into new media. The industry was anticipating this strike. They knew something was going to happen, so they began stockpiling up to 6 months worth of content. So instead of the regular 50 films that were being produced at any given time, they upped it to 150. So they began producing almost triple of what they had regularly been filming, and they canceled their show breaks and shot continuously. So moving on to planning, they did all of this research for planning this strike, and the writers knew that their best leverage was their timetable. October 31st was when this contract was gonna expire, so they knew that they had to start soon. If they waited longer to negotiate, the industry was just gonna keep stockpiling that footage, and they were gonna lose their leverage. So new media was the primary issue for negotiating, and their key message was, if you get paid, we get paid. It was simple, but very effective. And member solidarity was key. So this labor union reached out to all of the writers in the Guild of New York and said, we need all of your support. Communication was to inform the members that their personal and the industry survival was based on getting this new contract that would compensate them for their work. Members were contacted and reminded about this message on a continuous basis. They reached out to media platforms, even Wall Street and online, to publicize how important new media was going to be to the survival of their industry. And they didn't fully rely on traditional media because, as we all know, there is always a bias, leaning toward one side or the other. So they reached out to non-traditional avenues to spread that message as best they could. So their objectives were to ensure their members understood and believed in the idea behind their strike, why they were doing this, and the importance of solidarity. And they positioned the writers as today's typical workforce and used this positioning to generate a favorable support system for their writers. Their key strategies were to leverage the talent and the creative ability of the membership to tell the story of each other to the public. And they also leveraged industry support to put a press on the companies to negotiate. So now we're going to move on into the execution, how they got this strike in play. It was a multi-step process, and a communication strategy was used leading up to the strike. There was constant information flow, which was important in keeping that solidarity with the members. For the members specifically, they had in-home meetings and phone chains, and they did email blasts and text messages to the members and made posts on the website as well to keep everyone updated. Their tactics during the strike was to have the picket signs not pre-produced, but actually handwritten by the writers themselves. So the public could see that they were intentional about this strike process. And it was also for branding. They leveraged comedy talents to write pieces about what was going on. So they reached out to SNL, David Letterman, The Daily Show, and the writers themselves were encouraged to put updates on their own websites to tell the public what they were doing, why they were doing it. There was a constant information flow going out through social media and text messages and video blogs and everything like that. And there were weekly updates sent to the president of the WGAE, so he knew exactly what was going on as well. At the strike places, there were leaflets and information packets sent out to the public or passersby just so they knew the right information. And so anytime, they also have held a close look on the media and the coverage that was going on to make sure that any incorrect information was caught as soon as they could, and they corrected that as quickly as possible. They also used special events to generate positive views of the coverage. So on a day, they had a specific event called the Solidarity Day Rally, where celebrities and writers well known in the area came and said that they would actually give up their Emmys and their Oscars and really any other major awards that they had given in support of this strike. And so that was really a big deal to have these big names say, hey, I'm fighting for this, you should too, and we should be compensated for the work that we're doing. And they even went to Congress. They lobbied with congressional leaders in DC and held a mock debate in Congress with writers from certain shows. And this debate actually generated a lot of media coverage and buzz in Congress, and that led to a strong interest on the internet as well. So moving on to evaluation, the strike after 100 days was considered successful. The new NBA contract included new media, and the writers now received a percentage of the producer's gross income of new media revenues. So when they went to vote for this new contract, they needed 51% support. They actually got 93.6%. And member solidarity was extremely strong throughout the entire 100 days because they had kept that continuous flow of information, and that solidarity was held very strong. The media actually bragged on the success of the strike, saying that it was unexpected, amazing, and the reason that they won new media in the NBA contract because of their solidarity. The media coverage reached national and international levels, and most writers said that the Guild had won the PR war due to their non-traditional tactics that they used during the strike. Public support for the strike exceeded their expectations as well, because polls showed that writers had a 60+% favorable public opinion at all times during the strike. And that was actually surprising because the public meant the audience of these films and TV shows that the writers were going on strike, and that meant that their favorite TV shows may have been on pause for a while. They weren't going to get their favorite films or their favorite TV shows if they supported their writers, but they had the support that they needed through this, and that was actually a surprise to really everyone involved. So going into our conclusion, because the Writers Guild had anticipated this crisis, they were able to get ahead of the problem and solve it. Between the solidarity of the writers and their positive media coverage, their 100-day strike was successful, and they received the outcome that they wanted. The most interesting fact that I found throughout all of my research was that this meant we got some of our favorite shows, like The Office, or Friday Night Lights, or Hannah Montana, or even The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. All of these writers were the ones that went on strike because they felt they deserved the compensation that they had not been getting in the past. And after a few years after the strike, a documentary-style movie was released, and it showcased the details of the weeks leading up to the strike, what happened in the planning process. And the movie's website states that with the rising of this new media, the 100-day strike tackled all of the important questions regarding the new frontier of entertainment, and that was new media. And this strike was defined it defined a business model for the internet, which was a growing source of media during that time, but we know that it's going to be a continuing growing source of new media in the future.